Frontier models under lock and key. OpenAI previewed GPT-5.6 Sol this week and immediately handed the keys to a bouncer. The new model family Sol at the top, Terra in the middle, Luna as the budget tier launches in a limited preview for a small group of trusted partners whose participation has been shared with the government. The blog post buries this behind 6 paragraphs of benchmark charts, but the sentence that matters is the quiet admission. We don't believe this kind of government access process should become the long-term default. Sol's pricing lands at $5/$30 per million input/output tokens, Terra at $2.50/$15, Luna at $1/$6. Competitive, if you can get to the counter. On the capability side, Sol sets a new state-of-the-art on long-horizon command-line coding workflows and is competitive with Mythos Preview using only about 1/3 of the output tokens on Exploit Bench. OpenAI dedicated over 700,000 A100 equivalent GPU hours to automated red teaming aimed at universal jailbreaks. And real-time cyber classifiers can now pause generation midstream while a larger reasoning model reviews the conversation. The explicit framing. That Sol is better at finding and fixing vulnerabilities than carrying out end-to-end attacks. Is OpenAI's attempt to thread the dual-use needle. The staggered release is not OpenAI's idea. It is the direct consequence of what happened to Anthropic. When Fable 5 launched in April, the US government pulled access within days after the NSA reportedly claimed Mythos broke into almost all classified systems within hours. Anthropic shut everything down. Now, weeks later, the government has allowed Anthropic to restore Mythos access to a small group of cyber defenders and infrastructure providers, while Fable remains unavailable to regular users. Anthropic says it is pleased to see this progress and continues working with the government to expand access, with negotiations expected to continue into the weekend. The community is not taking this well. String changes discovered in Claude Code v2.1190 hint that Fable the 5th of May return with a weekly usage cap. You've used your Fable 5 usage for this week. Appeared in the codebase while purchased separately from your plan was removed. Users on r/Claude AI are oscillating between relief and suspicion. A weekly cap is better than no access. But veterans note that string changes in CC have shipped and then quietly reverted more than once. The broader reaction is crystallizing into a policy debate. One widely circulated video essay frames the situation as regulatory capture. Anthropic's fear-based marketing campaign gave the government the justification to demand staggered releases, and now every frontier lab faces the same process. The argument is blunt. Startups that can't jump regulatory hurdles fall behind while incumbents with government partnerships accelerate. Aaron Levy notes that we now have de facto AI regulation. And Bill Gurley accuses Anthropic of wanting the US government's protection against competition for years and years, rather than suing over the distillation attacks through normal legal channels. The counterpoint is that open source becomes more important than ever. But open weight models are still months behind the frontier. And if Dario Amodei sees open source catching up, he's going to champion regulation against that too. When your AI agent is the attack surface. A security researcher who wanted to compete at Pwn2 Berlin 2026 but got rejected has published a detailed write-up of a Claude Code sandbox escape that earned $3,750 from Anthropic's bug bounty, versus the $40,000 Pwn2 would have paid. The vulnerability chain CVG HS A7835, 87Q9 Revolivi CVSS 7.7 is elegant and alarming. A prompt injection hidden in a cloned repo's CLAUDE.md file drives Claude Code's own worktree tools into a Git dear confusion state. The malicious repo is laid out so its root directory doubles as a valid Git repository. Head config, objects, refs all sit at the top level alongside the prompt injection. The attack sequence creates a worktree name.git, exploits Git's core.fsmonit.or to achieve code execution inside the sandbox, then pivots through a symlink chain to write to .zshenv. Since ZA sources that file before the seatbelt sandbox profile takes effect, the attacker achieves unsandboxed code execution on the host from the most restricted Claude Code permissions mode. Anthropic's fix, reject Git as a worktree name. But the researcher notes 2 additional bugs in the chain: worktree creation outside the project directory and the ability to overwrite home directory files remain undressed. The broader lesson: an AI coding agent's tools are the attack surface. The exploit never calls a raw shell. It puppets Claude's sanctioned enter worktree/exit worktree/create worktree tools via natural language instructions. Microsoft's Parrot Python risk identification tool for generative AI represents the other side of this equation. An open-source framework for security professionals to proactively identify risks in generative AI systems before attackers do. Meanwhile, OpenAI's Codex CLI has its own self-inflicted wound. A debug logging sync writes to a local SQLite database at trace level by default, dumping everything from WebSocket payloads to file accesses. One user measured roughly 37 terabytes written over 21 days. About 640 terabytes per year, enough to chew through a typical consumer SSD's warranted endurance in under 12 months. The bug ignores the standard restlog variable, and despite reports since April, it remains open. The workaround: symlink.codex/logs2.sclite/tmp/. Cybersecurity. Open models meet the AI-Augmented SOC. Binary Defense published what amounts to a 2027 SOC analyst job description, and the punchline is that the job isn't disappearing. It's getting harder. The deterministic work enrichment lookups, IOC correlation, first-pass alert prioritization is leaving the queue because agents handle it better. What's landing on the analyst desk instead? Hypothesis-driven hunting. AI output triage where the value lives in the disagreement with model verdicts and decision provenance hygiene. Capturing the why behind every judgment call so the agent layer can improve and the audit trail holds up. The practical recommendation is sharp. Stop measuring tickets per shift. Stop training on individual log interpretation in isolation. Start training on hypothesis construction and critical evaluation of AI output. The teams still running 2022 playbooks are the largest group, and time isn't on their side. On the model side, OpenMythos, a cybersecurity-focused fine-tune of Qwen 3.627b. Posted benchmarks across S2 Bench Pro, CyberGym, and CyberBench showing meaningful improvement over the base model. It is not frontier competitive, and the community correctly notes the benchmark comparisons use models that are months old: GPT-5.5, Opus 4.8. But for a small, open-weight model targeting the security domain specifically, it represents the kind of accessible, self-hostable tooling that smaller SOCs, the ones without frontier API budgets, need as the role shifts from queue clicking to judgment work. The pattern is familiar. Specialized open-weight models lag the frontier on general benchmarks but outperform on domain tasks that matter. One model to orchestrate them all. Cicana AI launched Fugu, marketed as one model to command them all. And the pitch is that it is not actually one model. Fugu dynamically orchestrates a pool of frontier LLMs behind a single OpenAI-compatible API. The mechanism, grounded in two ICLR 2026 papers, Trinity and the Conductor, uses a lightweight about 0.6B backbone that never answers the user directly. Instead, it produces a hidden state at the penultimate token. A bias-free linear head scores each available worker model, and the top worker is dispatched. The full system has roughly 19,500 trainable parameters. The head plus singular value fine-tuning offsets, optimized gradient-free via SEP-C MAES. Fugu Ultra scales this up by replacing the per-turn picker with a 7B conductor that emits a whole workflow DAG. The benchmarks are aggressive. Fugu Ultra claims shoulder-to-shoulder performance with Fable 5 and Mythos preview on coding, reasoning, and scientific benchmarks while delivering frontier capability without the risk of export controls. A pointed reference to the access restrictions discussed above. Pricing mirrors the frontier. Fugu Ultra at $5/$30 per million tokens, with subscriptions from $20/month standard to $200/month max. Vercel immediately made Fugu Ultra available on its AI gateway with no markup. The mechanism is already being reverse-engineered. OpenFugu is an independent open-source reimplementation that reconstructs Fugu's routing from the published papers and released artifacts, trains its own conductor on NVIDIA's tool-scale dataset, and serves it behind an open AI-compatible endpoint. The self-test achieves 95% agent accuracy and 100% role accuracy against the original checkpoint. The trained router shows plus 107% improvement over the best single worker model on query-level routing. The key insight: no worker weights are ever touched. It is macro-level composition over other people's models. The theoretical foundation for this kind of scaled inference coordination also advanced this week. Spiral, a new framework from Stanford, trains a language model to use sequential, parallel, and aggregative inference compute end-to-end. The system independently samples parallel reasoning traces, then generates a final aggregation trace conditioned on those traces, with all components optimized against the reward of the final output. The key innovation is using set reinforcement learning for the parallel traces. All generations in a set receive the same shared learning signal, encouraging the model to explore diverse strategies rather than collapsing onto redundant attempts. Under recursive self-aggregation, Spiral achieves up to 15% higher performance and 11x scaling efficiency over GRPO. The papers please Internet. A FIRE Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression published a detailed warning about the global rush toward age verification. And the core argument is simple. Age verification is identity verification. Australia's under-16 social media ban, effective since December 2025, mandates that platforms collect biometric data, government IDs, or other identity information. Yet the government's own research shows 7 out of 10 kids still use social media. Snapchat outsources verification to a company based in Singapore. Discord suffered a breach of its age verification complaint system that leaked government ID images and personal data for nearly 70,000 Australians. The UK plans to go further with Australia Plus enforcement, with officials openly discussing age-gating VPN use, a move that would put Britain in the company of China, Iran, and Russia. In the United States, at least 25 states have passed legislation addressing minors' social media access, and federal proposals like COSA would override states that want to maintain an open internet. The through line: once we create this legislative infrastructure of surveillance, we may find it very difficult to tear down. The censorship problem cuts in the other direction, too. The Swiss Federal Supreme Court is evaluating Heretic, an obliteration tool that removes ideological constraints from language models, for their own use. The paper Measuring and Mitigating Overalignment for LLMs in Multilingual Criminal Law Courts investigates solutions to the problem every lawyer encounters. Models that refuse perfectly legitimate requests about criminal activity, drug chemistry, or contract advantage. Heretic's evaluation in Section 5.2 received a favorable conclusion. As one commenter noted, drug discovery teams face the same barrier. You can easily guess we can't use mainstream/closed LLMs. AI hardware, silicon skips, and hot tub coolant. Apple is reportedly skipping high-end M6 Mac chips entirely, jumping to an AI-focused M7 line that will include M7 Pro, M7 Max, and M7 Ultra variants. The move signals that Apple's chip design priorities have shifted. The neural engine and on-device inference workloads now drive the architecture, not incremental CPU/GPU core improvements. For context, the M5 Pro/Max already delivered 4x faster LLM prompt processing versus M4, and developers have demonstrated running 397B parameter models on Apple's unified memory architecture. Skipping a generation number to rebrand around AI capability is a marketing statement as much as an engineering one, but the substance is real. On-device inference is now the differentiating feature for the Mac Pro line, not raw core count. At the data center end of the spectrum, NVIDIA's Rubin architecture eliminates evaporative cooling entirely. Every heat-generating chip, not just GPUs, sits on a water block in a closed-loop glycol water system that needs only to stay below 45 degrees Celsius on the cold side, reaching 55 degrees Celsius on the outlet. That modest temperature delta means ambient temperature air running over dry heat exchangers handles the rejection. No water lost, no evaporative chillers needed. NVIDIA's motivation is transparent. Cooling costs money, and running this hot saves $4 million per year for a 50 MW hyperscaler, the community's best observation. The amazing thing is that this wasn't done from the start with LLM data centers. The trade-off is component lifetime. Running hotter shortens it. But as the article notes, these NPUs will be obsolete before thermal degradation matters. The Agentic Developer Toolkit. The gap between AI wrote some code and AI shipped a feature is closing fast. Claude.md is an autonomous, stack-agnostic feature pipeline for Claude Code. Give it a goal and a spec, and it breaks work into small phases, builds each one test first behind a quality gate that can't be faked, and ships them through GitHub PR to automated checks to merge. It is resumable across sessions. Stop today, restart in 3 weeks, and it picks up from Git history, not conversation memory. The design philosophy is explicit. AI coding assistants are amazing at the next 50 lines. They're terrible at the next 50 steps. On the quality side, Agentic QE Fleet deploys 60 specialized AI agents across 13 QE domains. Test generation, coverage analysis, flaky test detection, security scanning, chaos engineering. Coordinated by a Qwen agent that decomposes requests and fans out to specialists in parallel. A tiny dancer router scores task complexity and routes to the cheapest model that can handle it, from free local Llama to full Opus reasoning. The system connects to 11 coding agent platforms via a single MCP server and installs in 3 commands. The complementary tool Repo Explainer takes a different angle. It transforms complex GitHub repositories into visual explainer pages with architecture diagrams, plain language walkthroughs, and persona-driven narratives, addressing the gap where excellent tools die in obscurity because their R, E, A, D, M, E, S speak only to experts. For front-end craft, Impeccable provides 23 commands that give developers a shared design vocabulary with their AI agent, each mapped to one discipline: typography, color, motion, layout. It strips the AI slop tells out of generated UI. The default interfont, purple gradients, glassmorphism, and welcome to our platform copy. A deterministic 44-rule slop detector can wire into PR checks with exit codes the build reads. The skill works across Claude Code, Cursor, Copilot, Gemini CLI, and Codex CLI, with provider-specific builds that ban each model's known design habits. Rounding out the tooling news, Baidu released Unlimited OCR, a 3.3B multilingual OCR model under MIT license that handles full document parsing across single images, multi-page documents, and PDFs with a 32K output length. A practical workhorse for the document-heavy pipelines these agentic tools increasingly depend on.